We're not live yet.
We're ready to go back live. Now I need to text Eric to get back on the call.
The call cannot.
Hey, we're ready for you to dial in. Yeah, we were to the tail end of it. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Okay, Mayor, we're ready to go live.
Okay. We're going to reconvene in open session to consider and take action, if any, on any item discussed in executive session, and it's 5:47. And now we're going to go into the discussion items, which is the number one is, or 2.1 is panhandling.
Okay, we put this item on the agenda. We've had some complaints about panhandlers here and throughout the city. And I've asked our city attorney, Roxanne, and our chief of police to join us to see how to educate us and what we can and cannot do in reference to the panhandlers. Roxanne and Chief, do you all want to start the discussion?
Sure, Roxanne, you want me to go first or?
Sure.
Okay, so I think what's really catapulted this situation to the front lines for all of us is that those individuals that had been hanging out in front of City Hall, the female's still there. We've received a lot of complaints on them because they're right there at the Y. They're at a stop sign and everybody has to basically confront them, not necessarily face to face, have a conversation, but it's intimidating when you stop next to them and they're looking up at you or they got their sign there. It kind of guilt trips people into thinking they either have to give something or whatever, puts them in an uncomfortable position. So we've had a lot of complaints about it. We haven't had anything that meets the criteria of aggressive solicitation, which we do have an ordinance for here in the city. But we have seen complaints on Facebook and stuff where there might be some aggression that has been taking place, but nobody directly being a victim of that has brought that directly to our attention. The things that we have, the complaints we have had where we've gone out and worked on it, was basically informational, and we've resorted to citing them for the illegal littering because they have been leaving a mess around, so they have been cited. I don't know what the status is on those violations, but I think that's fixed the trash problem, but panhandling is still taking place. And as far as all the research that I've found and everything that I've shared out publicly and with y'all, with what we have in place today, panhandling is an expression of free speech. And to go beyond that, we would have to get some very good legal input from Roxanne. And we're going to have to be ready to take the battle as high as it could potentially go if we were to take some strategic route in creating an ordinance against it. Roxanne?
I feel like I should let Councilmember Knight speak, Mayor, because he's done a lot of research and I want to hear what his concerns are, what his ideas are. I will tell you that researching panhandling and the constitutionality of it is like a really difficult law class. You start learning about words and reminded me certainly of words such as content-based, content-neutral, designated public forums, non-traditional designated public forums. I started remembering things like narrowly tailored to meet a substantial government interest. I mean, there's just a lot of fancy words with a lot of case law behind them. I understand that there's been some panhandling problems, and so I'd like to hear what those are, and maybe we can creatively come up with an idea. I will tell you that panhandling and its freedom of expression or homelessness issues or whatever act an organization wants to take a spin on can be very litigious. So I really want to hear what the council's concerns are, and let's see if we can figure this out.
Well, what
looked through all of them ordinances that I printed up is basically if you single out panhandling, you're going against state law. And I believe it's Abilene had a major homeless problem, and they're one of 4 cities in the United States that pretty much eradicated it with their ordinance. And their ordinance is basically if you're on a median, if you're on a sidewalk, walking on a curb, you can't stop and sit down. You have to keep moving, which pretty much their ordinance goes against anyone in town. It doesn't just single out one single group of people. And Galveston, they have one. It's similar. I kind of picked all the ones. I think there was like 6 or 7. Galveston and Abilene had the best 2 drawn up ordinances that I could find that I think might be able to make something work out of those because they're not directly targeting panhandlers. They're not directly targeting anybody. They're targeting anyone that's walking down a sidewalk. It pretty much takes the deal out to where somebody's walking in a median, like by the stop sign in front of the police department. They can't stop and sit down. They have to keep moving.
That's interesting.
That's very creative too, and that's what that legal argument, if you recall, some while back that I shared out to the group. They're basically saying don't go after panhandling, go after behaviors that may align alongside of panhandling.
Yeah.
Very, very good point, Jason. Appreciate that.
Did you say in Galveston, Jason?
Yeah, Galveston. Well, that one is in Abilene. That's where they worded their ordinance was in Abilene, but Galveston has a pretty good ordinance for it also.
We spent a weekend on the beach in Galveston not very long ago, and I can tell you what, there were people on the sidewalk begging for money.
Yeah, see, Galveston doesn't have the sidewalk one. The one that has the deal where you got to keep moving, that's in Abilene. And I've heard that a little bit also. That they redirected the problem in Galveston, but they still have it. One in Abilene, they pretty much eradicated their problem because I've talked to quite a few people up there, and I guess they had a pretty major problem, and they pretty much did away with it with their ordinance.
I mean, I like the idea. I would have to think of all occasions when we would not. Well, I mean, I like that idea. What Abilene did, I think that's a good idea. But I was just trying to think, when would we want people to stand on a median, or I can't think of one. So that sounds like a pretty good idea to me.
Does that does that include sidewalks as well?
Yes.
So how about when people are watching the parades?
That's what I was going to say about a parade, and during the, just different, like they had a graduation parade going up and down, so that's going to eliminate that right there, because you can't just change it just to, it could come back at you and say that you're discriminating. It's like, how come they can do that and we can't do that? So I'm just kind of leery about that.
We could put an exception in it for purposes like that.
Yeah, I agree.
We would also have to consider that the cheerleaders and stuff like that, they usually have a car wash over at Discount Auto right down there across from the post office. And they are standing on the street, waving signs, looking for money and stuff. So we have to be careful that we don't run our local kids off and stuff. So yeah, we would have to make exceptions.
Well, that's also private property, and they don't have to stand right on the sidewalk. They can be on the property itself.
Right, but one of the things they also have, remember, Girl Scouts, they stand in front of H&R, in front of the bakery, different places selling their Girl Scout cookies. They set up tables out there.
Yeah, and that's on the right of way.
Is this a problem? I'm going to warn the council, sometimes you have to pick and choose what you want to fight. These panhandling going about it a different way. What I mean by going about it a different way, they did ordinances like sleeping in public place prohibited, right? Or
Yeah.
urinating in public. I mean, these were a lot of
Yeah.
acts that were very similar to what we're expressing. Some of the original ordinances that I think that Mr. Knight was looking at, Councilmember Knight, was aggressive solicitation, which is something we certainly have in our city right now.
Yeah.
When we start enacting ordinances, there's always the risk of unintended consequences, right? So we may be trying to reduce aggressive solicitation done by panhandlers on certain areas of our city, but someone else may interpret it as impeding our infringement to stand still on the sidewalk, a public piece of property. It may not be what your intent is, but it's something that can be easily interpreted that way. And given the situation that we have right now in our country, you're going to have to really start to think about the angles of how one can interpret this. I will tell you that, like I said, panhandling has its own legal institutions that are prepared to sue. So whatever it is that we do, we have to be prepared to be sued on this particular ordinance. And so if there is a widespread massive problem like there was in Abilene, or now sounds like in Galveston, I can see why their council might have actually taken the risk to draft an ordinance and see whether or not they got sued. I also wonder whether or not they drafted the ordinance and whether or not they issued citations on that ordinance, because you certainly would have to have some kind of standing in order to file suit on it up the court system. So my question to the council at this point is, we can certainly look in and research and bring something to you. But is this a risk that the council wants to move forward on because it's such a widespread problem in your community? I hope
It
that
is a nuisance. The panhandler that's there at the Y has been a nuisance. It's a unsightly scene for a lot of the citizens because it's something that they've never experienced before in Aransas Pass, having someone sitting there begging or asking for money. Is it a widespread nuisance? No, not whatsoever at all. It is this one couple. Don't believe I've seen anybody else except that one couple.
Oh, there's quite a few of them popping up around town lately.
Well, there are some at Walmart. There has been some there in the past at Walmart at the entrance and exits. Yeah, there has been.
What locations are you seeing, Jason? Give us a location.
I've seen one across the street from HEB. One whenever you're coming down Wheeler and hits Commercial Street. There's a guy, usually sometimes he sits down there on a bucket. I've seen him down there quite a few times. And then of course Walmart, you'll see him there. Sometimes they'll have the same people bounce between Lowe's and Walmart, and then you might have somebody different. There's always, it seems like one of them goes away and then one or two will come back about a week later, bounce around between Walmart and Lowe's.
I have a question.
there have been lawsuits as well when cities create these creative ordinances to get around these types of issues, where they'll even sue the city based on the enforcement of that ordinance, and also assert Eighth Amendment violations because there's no resources available to assist in helping a mentally disabled person on the side of the road. Or, I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that come up. I just want to know if it's a very interesting topic, a very studious topic. If the council generally wants us to try to pursue and put something together, we will. But I will warn you that it will get sued.
What did you have to say, Eric?
A question for clarification, maybe from Jason. If it requires them to keep moving, do they have anything written into that? I'm just interested on that. What if they're walking back and forth, just holding a sign, so they are still moving?
Yeah, and that's what it says, that you're walking on a sidewalk, a medium, on a curb. You just have to keep moving. You can't like basically stop and sit down. But I see what you're saying. You can just go walk back and forth, and you say, "Well, I'm moving. I'm not sitting down." So I understand where you got at with that one.
Okay, just curious. but yeah, there are several. We see them regularly. I had a call just last week I took from my guys on a completely new guy from somewhere in North or Central Texas. He was doing pull-ups on one of the traffic signs while panhandling at Walmart. So yeah, we do definitely have several of them in town.
I will, just a short, quick story. Um, Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was working for the city of Dallas, one of the things that I had to do was come up with creative solutions on how to handle the numerous hundreds of panhandlers we had in downtown Dallas. Doing some work with the police, it became very clear that they were actually being bussed in from neighboring towns and from different parts of the city into downtown Dallas. That's why we had so many hundreds during the day. And they sort of disappear at night. That's because they all went to the secret bus stop to get picked up and taken back to the homeless shelters. The homeless shelters didn't operate during the days. So I'm wondering what is promulgating this problem, what the core issue is. Is it because we've torn down a lot of vacant substandard structures, they've got nowhere else to go, so they're more visible? Or is it that they're actually being transported in from another town that doesn't want them in their town and drops them off at our town? Or is there an economic substantial problem in the city that's causing people who actually live there to do this? Or is it just career panhandlers? I'm not quite sure. But I do think
probably a mix of it's probably a mix of the climate, because we got a nice climate during summer and spring, and we got everything going up from Gregory to Sinton, and everyone wants to follow the money trail. And you got COVID, you got people left and right that have lost their jobs, taking big cuts in pay. I mean, those could be part of the problem. They could not, but there's a lot of people going through hard times right now.
Do we think it's the same people, or is it different people each time?
There's been different ones coming in.
I can speak to some of the regulars. Of course, the one on the corner is Stapp in Commercial. He's suffers, of course, from mental health related issues and loves to hold his sign up to traffic. Then you have the guy on the that sits on the can there at Cleveland in Commercial, and he is a longtime resident here, and he does that for an income source. The ones at the Y across from City Hall, the couple, they were actually, I'm told, carted over here by Rockport Police Department, and did not like the harassment that they were dealing with by that police department or the city or people or whatever. But when they got here, it was a lot more fruitful for their earnings, apparently. The gentleman that was from out of town, he was painted all over his chest. He was doing pull-ups there by the Walmart, and he was there. He came over here supposedly for a job at the laundromat. I don't understand that one from Central Texas. And then, like Jason's saying, there have been some one-off situations every now and then. I've seen a lot more of them more recently where they're unknowns, but we try to get to know them and see if there's ways we can help them. We try to facilitate them with resources in Corpus. I'll even provide rides. I had a female that looked like she might be prostituting or panhandling with the guy at Stapp and Commercial, and she actually was looking for a way to get out of town, and we accommodated to help her get out of town to a shelter or something in Corpus. So we do try to work with them as best we can and provide them with resources. It's just I won't allow my staff or myself to resort to measures that I cannot legally justify that would subject this city potentially to scrutiny or negative scrutiny or poor liability issues. So I won't do what maybe some others might do. I'm not saying they do. I don't know what their circumstances are in other communities, but occasionally cops do bring them to our town from other communities.
Well, that's what Turnbow used to do. He load them up in a cop car and dump them off in Pleasanton back in the day.
I've heard stories, but more recently, area chief was indicted for running somebody out of his town, and he ended up losing his badge and everything over that, and subjected the city to liability. So yeah, back in the day, some of those practices might work very well, but we're
Oh,
just
yeah,
on
nowadays,
time
yeah.
of police and enforcement today.
Chief, this is Jan, and I have a question. The couple that sits at the Y that has the little dog, I would put a dime that I saw them walking out of an apartment at the St. Laurent apartments. Are we sure that they are homeless?
No, they do. They do reside here in town. They do have a place that they reside at, and he's very vocal in that they panhandle to make a living. That is his living. He uses that money to pay for bills, get essentials. I think even buy marijuana, and he's open and upfront about that.
Yeah, Jan, he's staying at the Sear Lodge, and they're paying like $40 a night for a room there.
Wow. Okay.
Mary, do we have any citizen comments?
Yes, there was one comment posted online, and that was from Christian Fries. His comment was that Corpus has a panhandling awareness sign at SPID underpasses. And
Yeah.
that's the only comment.
So there are
Really good point. A campaign to kind of inform people not to provide funding.
so I did that. I put out basically a chief's message or whatever a few years back, and I pointed out that I said, take your money and give your contribution to organizations that help them. We got beat up over that. I will tell you that people don't like government telling them how to use their money. It went very, very south on me when we put that information out. Now, the signage is something you could put up, but again, you will probably see that negative reaction. People don't want to be told how to spend their money. Some people will tell you flat out that they'll continue to contribute and give to panhandling. They're never going to stop because that's what they feel their God-given right is to do to help people. Just so you know.
Any other comments?
So the consensus of the council, do you want to move forward with this to have a Roxanne do some further research on this item, on potentially coming up with some kind of ordinance? What is the consensus, the direction that you all would like this item to go in?
This wouldn't hurt to look into it.
Let's see what we can come up with.
Okay, then.
Okay. We're gonna go now into the utility terrain vehicles, UTVs.
This is another item that we've been getting calls on, people wanting, to use UTVs on our city streets. I've asked the chief once again and Roxanne to be here to speak of on this matter. I know that I think we've received already some comments, right, Mary, with regard to this as well. Chief, do you want to start us off on that?
Sure. So I did speak with Roxanne. We had a good conversation about this earlier today, just to catch up with one another on it. The state has paved the way for what we are doing with golf carts to now be expanded into us being able to do with UTVs, ATVs. They call them off-road vehicles. But with the new changes as of 2019, I believe when that went into effect, we also are going to have to update our golf cart ordinance as well. It basically looks like all these off-highway vehicles are permitted to be driven in the city. If the city allows that, we have to adopt or do something. I'll let Roxanne speak to that to allow it, but then they have to get a license plate through the Department of Motor Vehicle, like you would or I would going to register our vehicle. So if the city wants to approve it and move forward, there is a process by the state now paved where we can do that. I get requests for this all the time. In fact, one fellow who's out probably in the audience called me Monday, just checking up with me on this request. I'm all for it. I think coastal community and being able to use your UTV, your golf car, your ATV on the road, as long as it follows the law and meets the requirements, is a great idea. Roxanne?
Thank you, Chief. And I'm going to push back what I said to you about those UTVs or golf carts or off-highway vehicles. They call them so many different things, and there's different definitions for each one of those titles. We can, as a city, authorize them to be on our streets, but the street can be no more than 35 miles per hour. So it can't be a major highway, can't be a major street. It's got to be under 35 miles per hour. And that UTV golf cart does not have to be registered with the state, but they do have to get a license from the state Department of Motor Vehicles. That license that they get does not expire, but it's not transferable either. So it's only good for that owner for that vehicle. They also have to have some slow moving vehicle emblems on them to warn people around them that they're there. And I think the critical point, though, to remember is that we can allow them, but only in streets that are under 35 miles per hour or 35 miles per hour.
I think that's a very good point. I know that I have requested information on this for several years. Eric, I know will probably remember I've asked him about this several times. And I think the major roads, Harrison, Cleveland, Commercial, and Wheeler, I don't believe they, as you're saying, I don't think they should be on those roads, especially with the heavy industrial trucks that are on those roads these days.
No,
Well,
they just pretty much have to stick to city streets.
Yes.
I just want to follow up on Councilmember Scruggs. You actually were right on point all these years, Councilmember Scruggs, because the law was actually conflicting with itself and very unclear. And so it was the last legislative session that they cleared this up, that gave cities the authority to go ahead and allow this with those caveats in mind. And that became effective May 2019. So this is still fresh off the new books, but it was in large part to council members like you who were complaining about the laws not being clear. So they cleared them up.
All right, good. And I think it's also worth saying that as I remember in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, they can cross the street like a major street, like Commercial or whatever, but they can't go along the street, but they can cross it to get to the other side.
Yes.
Correct. They do have to register with the city. Every year they do have to register with the city at the planning department. So every year, I know the golf carts do, and we do collect a fee for that.
And I talked to Mayor Parker about it and asked him if they've had any issues with UTV, and he talked to their chief, and they said they have had 0 complaints. And that what they did, they pretty much, it's the same ordinance as a golf cart. Whatever you do on a golf cart, you can do on the UTV.
And speaking of the city registration, real quick, I don't see much value in having a city registration. I would rather do away with that, stick with the state registration, because I can run that state plate and I can get a return off of it. Whereas the city, I'd have to call into the city during hours or whatever and get that. It's kind of a little bit of redundancy. I think we could free up that city time, just have the city opt to allow it as long as it meets state requirement, if that's what Roxanne proposes. And then they have to be registered, or they have to get a license plate, from the DMV. And that license plate is very valuable to law enforcement. And I would agree with what Mr. Knight said. We've had our golf cart ordinance now for a while. Some, as you know, one of the city employees rides one to work every day. And I've had 0 issues that I can recall with that. In fact, it's quite the convenience for those that are using those vehicles.
Oh yeah, it is. I got one. I zip around all over the place on. They're fun.
Okay, so the favor of the council, the consensus is to move forward to proceed to try to amend our golf cart ordinance to allow for these type of vehicles on our streets. Is that correct? So that Roxanne can start working on that.
Yeah.
So I think it's no longer going to be called the golf cart ordinance. You're going to have a longer name of ATVs, UTVs, SEVs.
Yes,
Uh,
Yeah, Mary, is there any citizen comments?
Yes, I did receive an email. There was one comment that I received today, if I can read that email, and it's from a gentleman named Fred Austin. And his comments were that he'd like to ask the council if they would please consider making utility vehicles such as his, it's a Ranger Crew UTV, legal to drive on our streets of Aransas Pass. I would like to start by saying that they are legal to drive in Ingleside and Woodsboro and have been for years. I have shopped around and you're able to get insurance on these vehicles. State Farm has given him a quote that would insure it for the road. These utility vehicles have working tail lights, brake lights, and headlights, both bright and dim. They come with the same kind of seat belts that everyone uses that drives, and then he, in parentheses, puts shoulder and waist restraints. The Texas Department of Transportation approved tires are even sold for them. They all come with speedometers. They are much safer than the golf carts that have been approved to drive around town. The city could collect revenue on these vehicles, such as tags, registration, and even tickets if they were issued. In closing, I would really appreciate if you would approve utility vehicles to be legal here in Aransas Pass, and thank you for your time on this matter. Those were his comments.
Well, thank you, Mary. Any other questions?
Sandra, yes, Sandra, do you have any financials on how much revenue we actually get from getting the city registrations on the golf carts? I don't think it's very much if I remember the budget.
Yeah,
And
let me
would we-
pull that up right now real quick.
And then my second question would be for Roxanne, would we have to make, would we have to take the golf cart registration off for the city and go with the state? Would we have to make a motion for that? What would be our next step?
Right now, we're just getting direction from the council on how they want me to proceed. As I began to draft the ordinances, there's probably going to be some additional questions that you're going to have to answer. So today, there's no action needed. I'll just start working on the project with the staff and we'll bring it back to you at a future council meeting.
I know for the budget for 21 here for this fiscal year that we budgeted $2,100 for that revenue. I know that last year we received hold on. Last year we received $1,950. That's what we collected the whole year in golf cart license.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, we'll go into parking in unimproved areas.
All right. This has been an issue that was brought up before the P&Z. I believe that Jose is on the line. He has a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. Jose, are you available?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Jose. So do you want me to start your presentation?
If it's gonna be an issue, it doesn't matter. I can go.
No, I can start it right now.
Okay, that's fine. Do it.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, on the personal level, somewhere in October, there was this issue where one, not a resident, but she is Elizabeth Welborn. She is a judge with the San Patricio County, and she had a property on North McCampbell. I guess Corey had a call from her that there were some neighbors parking on the front yard, and so she was not pleased with the situation. what I learned was that she was trying to sell her property over there. So it was kind of affecting the property value that she was trying to sell. So she called the city. I guess she talked to mayor also, and she talked to me, and we went through the zoning ordinance. What came up was that parking on unimproved areas with section 12, it stated that it's not required off-street parking space that shall be located on the front yard in any single or duplex, that is the A1 and A2 or agricultural district. And so it was legally not permitted for any resident to park in the front yard. So Corey took charge of the situation, and I guess it was resolved. However, what is before us today is to determine whether we will have to add more of the restrictions on front yard parking on unimproved areas, or we have to leave it as is. And so that is the situation before the council for discussion.
Jose, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When Liz called in on that property, was she complaining about the wrecker service parking on that property?
I was not specifically there. Corey was there, and he said they were not parking on the front yard, but they were parking on the street, like on the sidewalk. So it was not specifically based on Corey's information. It was not specifically on the grass, but it was much more on the sidewalk.
Roxanne, do you remember when you went to court with the wrecker company? Is this the same property, North McCampbell? Because I know there was an issue with that. And I know that I've driven by there 100 times and the wreckers are still parked out there.
Well, I know we won in court. I don't know if this is the same property. If you give me just a second, let me check my file. That lawsuit was at 139 North McCampbell. And it was based on the trucker wrecker services parking behind a fence or on a vacant parking lot next to the Lamas's house.
I believe this is the same property because I know that the Welburns own the house directly across the street from that. That's why I was afraid of it. I have been by that house many times, and I know that the wreckers are still parked out there.
Okay, I didn't know it was the same property. Let me work on it and we'll bring it back in terms of that particular property. But generally speaking, you may want to go back to whether or not you want to change the ordinances in any capacity. Because it's different from the wreckers parking in a lawsuit that we've already been through. It's just enforcing a court order. So I'll check into that for us.
Okay,
Thank you.
I believe,
It would have to,
I believe,
you know, the chief, I had nights, and I think the chief or Corey or somebody, you'll have to go by at the early hours and everything like that to find those records parked on that property to make sure that they aren't doing that. But I know that I can go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and the records are on that property.
Okay, well, Corey would like to say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. Um, good, Ms. Moore. The times I've been by this property where you're referring to where the records are at, I've witnessed them parked in the street. I haven't actually seen them parked on the property. They may be parking on the property, just not during the daytime when I happen to get in that area. But I have seen them parked actually on the roadway. The vehicle that I relayed to OSE parking on the sidewalk was actually a neighbor down from Mrs. Welburn's property. They parked a inoperable vehicle on the sidewalk, unknowing that that was against city ordinance to block a sidewalk. It's actually a state violation for them to block the sidewalk. So I made contact and just gave them a heads up not to block the sidewalk. And that homeowner actually moved the vehicle within like 30 minutes. So he remedied that issue. I didn't see any other vehicles parked on sidewalks or blocking anything like that. But I will keep an eye on the records, though, Councilwoman Moore.
I just think it's at night when they go out, or they keep their records at the house in case they get a overnight call, but I know that they're there in the morning after we've had the issues with neighborhood complaints. Thank you, Corey, for your job,
Yes,
for
ma'am.
what you do.
Yeah. The next point I would like to bring before council is that there is another aspect where a proposed request has come in within the MH zone, manufactured home district. And that person is asking whether it's possible. He wants to buy about 1 acre land along an Oak Lane across the 35 bypass, which is zoned MH. And he wants to ask whether he can put.
No, Jose, I'm sorry. This is not on the agenda. We cannot discuss any items that are not on the agenda. We're
Okay.
just talking about parking in unimproved areas.
Yeah, this is also a question about unimproved area, but
Okay, I'm
it's
sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
He's asking whether he can put his 18-wheeler
Okay.
semi truck on that lot, and we don't have what the zoning code is saying is that it allows for one commercial motor vehicle that can be parked outdoors overnight. But with this one, we are not sure a commercial motor vehicle in terms of the size or oversized vehicle commercial, or so like an 18-wheeler can be parked on a property, a residential property such as that. And that's one issue I want you to discuss and see what's up.
And that vehicle that he used, that 18-wheeler that you're talking about, that's what he uses as a daily basis for his job, or what?
Yes, he's like a trucker. So yeah.
That's Calvin Hillis, right?
Uh-huh.
Mary, is there an ordinance already that prohibits that from people parking that in their yard, in their residence?
I'd have to do some research. I don't have that information right now.
Okay. Because I don't know why I remember that this has already come before council in the past that we've discussed this, but I may be wrong.
Yeah. So I can do much more research into that to figure out, when we talk of commercial motor vehicle, do we also have a limit on the size of that type of commercial vehicle, or it can be any as big as a semi truck to park in that residence?
Chief, are you still on the line?
I had to log off. My mic wasn't working.
Okay.
I didn't hear all the question, but I did want to respond. We did discuss this with council several years ago, actually, about doing yard parking is what it was called. Portland has a very similar ordinance. And at that time, council opted not to move forward with the ordinance. It was already written up at that time and ready to go, if I do recall correctly. Secondly, we have to keep in mind, you have neighborhoods like the Oak Park area off of Whitney, that if you force people to not be able to park in their single car driveway that leads up to their single car garage, it will clutter the streets more. A fire apparatus won't be able to get through. An ambulance might not be able to get through. And you're going to just have residents that have multiple drivers that live there that simply have nowhere to park those vehicles. So it's just something to consider as well, that there are some areas in town that development wise, this would create a substantial burden on those folks.
Yeah, it would.
Yes, it would. It is the same thing with that truck driver. It's kind of hard for you to own a piece of land that's across the street from your house, and you're not allowed to park the vehicle that you own, that you drive for work at a daily basis.
Exactly. That, yeah, kick off some people. You start messing with their livelihood where they're going to park their main work tool at.
So I'm getting maybe the consensus of the council is to leave this alone and not move forward with this. Correct? That's what I'm getting from everybody.
Well, if the MH allows him to park a commercial vehicle on it and he owns it and it's on the bypass, at this point, I would leave it alone. If we get construction all around it, we may be able to work with him to do something else. But at this time, I would say leave it alone.
Yeah,
Very-
same here.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Jose.
Any other questions? Okay, well, let's go to the basketball courts.
Okay, we put this on the agenda here for the workshop, for the special meeting, I'm sorry, at the request of several council members of the council and the mayor. I've asked Fernando to be here to give us, he has some cost estimates that he has, and some do you want to do the presentation, Fernando, or you just want to talk about the cost?
Yeah, I can share the screen so everybody can see what I'm talking about.
Okay,
And,
wonderful.
let me do that real quick. All right. Can everybody see it there?
Yes.
Yes.
Just real quick, I don't know what exactly y'all are looking at or what, so I just went and got some numbers. For a concrete slab for a full-size court, you're looking at about 40 grand. If you do a half-size court, it'll be about 19. I don't know if y'all looking at putting additional surface on top of that, so I put some numbers for asphalt and for the tiles that they use. We do have one currently at Veterans Park. It's a small court. It's just straight up concrete. We got to consider stuff like ground leveling, the hoops, and painting the stripes. So for a full size court, you're looking maybe about 45,000 for a court. Other things to consider, I don't know if we want to look at lighting, fencing, if we want to do sitting bleachers, roof covering. I don't know what y'all are looking at. Just pull some numbers real quick. And this is what I came up with. Of course, there's more cost depending on how much we want to put into it.
Yeah,
So,
we're looking at a basketball courts that's like the 24 by 50 or something like that, but it needs to be kind of covered at some point.
okay.
Yeah, I would think a basketball court with some kind of covering. I don't think we need fencing. I don't even think we need lighting at this point. But I think it'd be a great asset with the number of new residential developments and all the new growth that we're having in this area. We need more for our kids and our families to do. And I think adding a basketball court over at the park area between the dog park and the adult softball fields would be a great place for that.
Yes, and I'd like to ask, at some point we had like a grant for a pavilion that was covered and stuff. Whatever happened to that one grant? That's when the dog park and the skate park and all that stuff was in the same grant or something like that? Or am I wrong or what?
I think I know Sylvia had gotten some stuff for those parks. I think they only had enough to cover the dog park and the skate park, and I think that's why it was never completed because they ran out of funds. But I know they had some ideas of what they wanted to do out there, and somewhere there's some boards that have the layouts of a basketball court. But I don't think they ever got the funding to do the full thing.
Well, I would like you to look into the Ram. Do we want full court or half court?
It would be
Full
nice to
court.
have the full court.
We need full court with cover.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else have any input? Okay, well, I
What
guess we'll go.
size? Yeah. What size is the court over at Charlie Marshall's? Is that half court?
Charlie Marshall.
It's a full court. It's a full.
It's probably like 2 full courts. It's big.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah, there are a couple of courts there. I just didn't know because I'm not familiar with basketball.
I guess, Fernando, while you're looking into it, if you could get a quote or a price on fencing also, it just makes it look more complete.
Okay. Well, I know there by the dog park and the softball fields would be a good location if you already have a parking lot there. We do have existing water. If we wanted to put a water fountain, we have water there already. There is lighting there in the parking lot and in the softball field. So it just makes it easier. We had already looked at that location as well. So I'll start putting some numbers together and see what I can come up with, and then I'll bring it back at a later date.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Fernando.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll go to the logo on the groundwater tank. Oh, Mary, do we have any comments?
No, there are no comments online.
Okay, well then we'll go to the logo on the groundwater tank on Avenue 8.
This was placed on there at the request also of a council member. So I've asked Fernando also to stay and join us on this. I know in the past, the city council has discussed this. I know that it has been cost prohibitive for us in the past. We're looking, Fernando and I were talking, the estimates that Gary had gotten were between 20 to 40,000 to do the logo. But that doesn't include taking the logo off if the tank's gonna need another to be recoded. So that's just adding up to, that would add to the expense. I don't know, Councilman Knight, if you have something you'd like to add on this?
Yeah, I submitted a picture and it'll be, it won't be disputed by anyone here. I think everyone would probably pretty much agree on the logo design. I'm just going by what the community was looking into. It was the Black Panther we put on it, and I really like to see this done if any way possible. Just the logo. And I don't think Fernando. How's the rest? What's the shape of the rest of the tank? Like the lines, the piping going into it, the rest of the coating.
The tank itself is in good condition. It was rehabbed, I believe, in late 2014, and it was repainted in that year. So it had new coating and everything, and it's in good shape right now.
So if possible, we could just go with just the logo and that's it. Wouldn't have to really worry about the rest of the tank for a while.
I believe so.
Okay. All right.
But redoing the logo from what we had heard just the logo was because it had to be, that area needed to be recoded and ready for a new logo. It was going to be between $20,000 and $40,000. And that was on our November 4th meeting. And we said that there was way too many other things on the budget that we needed to handle at that time. So I don't know if anybody else has some suggestions.
And it's, well, I got a question. So we're talking about redoing the logo the way it is, or it's like changing the logo, or did I miss
Changing it.
something?
Yeah,
Changing
just
it to
changing
the school stuff?
city logo to a panther.
I believe we're discussing the water tower, the storage tank on Avenue A.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the one that at some point, I think there was a little discussion there about changing that logo and putting a panther on it.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's been almost a year ago. It was during one of the workshops that it got brought up.
November 4th, 2019, because I have all the minutes. I downloaded them. It started on October the 28th, 2019, and then it was brought at November 4th, 2019, when it was stated that it would be between $20,000 to $40,000 just for the logo, and we all said no, there was too much. But there may be other ways.
Well,
You know,
what
the
I
city
think,
had that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well,
I don't know, but
was,
I'm okay to change it to the panther logo on it. Go ahead, Terry.
we're
I'm sorry.
okay. We just, I have no qualms with changing it to the Panther logo whatsoever at all. The major obstacle is the funding. We already have our budget set for 2021. It's not an emergency item. I agree with the Panther logo on the water storage tank on Avenue A. As a matter of fact, Jason, I'm sure you will be the first one to agree that I am the one that brought this whole agenda item up back in 2019. It was brought up by me because we, as a council, changed the logo on the main water tower after it was collapsed by Hurricane Harvey. So it was a better location. It was a flip-flop. We had the panther originally on the tall water tower, and we had the city logo on the Avenue A tower or storage tank. So when we, as a city, decided to represent the city with the redfish on the tall water tower, it was a better option to have the panther on the water storage tank on Avenue A, because that is where our visiting teams and all of our students see our Panther Pride in that location. You're not going to see it, you know, the schools and the visiting teams are not going to see it on the tall water tower. So in so saying that, I do believe, Jason, that this would be the perfect opportunity for you as a newly elected council person to form a committee to oversee the funding. If you want it done before the next budget, if this is something that you truly, and you are truly passionate about this, my opinion is for you to form a committee. We have an alliance with the chamber, the school district, and the city. Maybe Roland Rodriguez could help you with this. Our Panther Booster Club could help you with this. But as far as budgeting goes this fiscal year, we do not have it in our budget to spend 40,000 plus on the Panther logo. Am I in agreement with it? Absolutely. I'm the one, it was my suggestion. So I'm absolutely in agreement with it. We need to find the funding somewhere. So with your passion and your following for this, it's a great opportunity for you to get your feet in a committee and find a way to get the funding.
Yeah, I think that probably the first thing, you know, is need to get some kind of bid to know exactly what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Right off the back, because we've $20,000 to $40,000. That's a big difference right there. It would be nice to be 20, but it could be, we just don't know what it costs because no one's, put price on it recently.
Well, the
The, ta-
cost
the tanks in the
as
ground.
do what, Ram?
No, the tanks in the ground. I can't see having to spend that. I mean, I'm good with the logo, but maybe we can get a better price because it's not up in the air,
Yeah.
and I think does we should be able to come up with the funding. If not in this physical year, maybe in the next year.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you will remember, Ram, we went with the very simple graphic design on the tall water tower, the new water tower. Very simple graphic because of the cost. I would like to, since we're talking about this now, certainly get out the misinformation on the tall water tower logo. The city council at no time put out a survey to the citizens. That was not done by the city council. That survey was put out erroneously without this council's consent. And it did bring a lot of attention. It was brought out by an employee of the city that was overzealous for the new water tower that we were all overzealous. We were all excited about it. But at no time, let me be very clear, which I've been very clear on this topic many, many times. And I have discussed this many times on Facebook. It's been discussed through the city newsletters. It's been discussed during the minutes at several council meetings. The city council did not approve the survey of the Panther logos that was on the city website a couple of years ago. That was put out erroneously. Now, water under the bridge, people do like it is a good fit to have the Panther on the city water storage tank on Avenue A. I completely agree with that. So, wanted to clear up that misinformation. The other misinformation I wanted to clear up was the city did not pay for the simple graphic logo that is on the tall water tower now. The logo that's on the water tower now, along with the paved street beside the new water tower and the lighting, those were added to the water tower because of the delay in the construction. So a meeting between the city manager, mayor, construction company, and the finance director, and probably the city attorney, those were freebies from the construction company. They were not paid for by FEMA, and they were not paid for by the city.
Correct and well spoken, Carrie. Thank you.
Yeah, but Mary, do we have any comments, Mary?
Yes, there are a couple of comments that were posted online. The first one is from Mary Gunn. Her comments are, yes, please, the community was asked, they voted, and something completely different was put on. And another comment by Ashlyn Mock, it shouldn't be put on the school to fund it. It should be paid by the city. Those are the only two comments.
Any other questions or comments by the council?
I think Carrie's idea, Jason, I would love to see you run with this because you have enough contacts here in the city. And to take this upon yourself, let's get yourself a quote and see what we can do, because I agree. Carrie was the first one to bring to the council that she wanted the Panther on it. Lot of conversation throughout the month on this. So let's see what we can do to put that Panther on it. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to get I'd really like to get a quote because I would let it be known, what it's going to cost, and Panther needs to be on that tank.
So
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
Fernando,
having a Panther. I
ex-
wouldn't mind having a Panther going that way.
exactly. So Fernando, is that asking Fernando and Sandra getting a quote for that? Is that something we do with an RF? What is it called? An request for purchase or RFP or
No,
what is that?
I think we can reach out just to get numbers so we can get an idea. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Okay.
Once we decide to move forward with it, then that's when we go out for RFPs to
Okay.
hire someone to do it. But just to
Okay.
get numbers, to get ideas, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to companies.
If it is the
Okay.
consensus of the council, staff can facilitate that and start working towards getting some more concrete numbers versus just this range that we currently have.
Yeah,
Yeah, the,
yes.
the consensus is we can go ahead and staff can go ahead and facilitate that.
Yes, so
Okay,
maybe we
I
can
think
get
that's a
that
great
money
idea.
from the pipeline.
I think we all believe that's a great idea because we all were on board with that to begin with.
Exactly.
That's
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
That
We'll go
would
ahead
be
and do
nice.
that. And we'll bring
All right.
back, we'll bring that back to the council once we have that information.
Okay, great.
Hey, any other questions or comments or anything?
No?
Okay, now we're gonna go to the Little League and softball fields.
Yes, Fernando has asked to put this on the agenda for discussion. He has been approached by Mr. Peña, but I'm going to let Fernando go ahead and speak on the subject. Fernando?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up because contracts we do them every year for both Little League and softball. They both expire in December. Little League's already doing registration, so I want to make sure we get on board to renew their contract if that's the route y'all want to pursue. And then I have been approached also by Mr. Peña that he wants to do a tournament in March, and I told him that his contract gets expired. We would have to go back out for bids again. And because of all the stuff going on with COVID and so forth, I wanted to make sure council was still okay for us to continue. Uh, Little League, like I said, is already registering and they're ready to go. Don't know if y'all want to go ahead and bring that contract back to council for approval. And then on the softball end, do we want to put it out for bids again?
Just put, I would like at some point for the city to take responsibility for the Little League field. And maybe when you come with an agreement with the Little League itself, uh, that way we can have the upkeep of those fields in immaculate condition versus leaving it up to the volunteers to be able to accomplish that. And I think at some point the city should have a part on the budget to be able to accomplish that. But that's just my opinion, okay?
I agree with Mayor Ram because that is city property and we should maintain our city property to the extent where it can be used by the Little League properly.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree.
That's something maybe Fernando that we could look at the next budget when we're working on our budgets because that's right around the corner again, budget season, and that's something to keep in mind to add to our budgets.
Yeah, so that would make it so much easier. That would make it so much easier for people to be able to participate in Little League, and we can have a stronger Little League program for the city of Aransas Pass. We need to have somewhere for all those citizens coming into Aransas to be able to have a recreational spot.
Let's just make sure, Fernando and Sandra, any outside vendors that we contract with for the use of that field, that we protect the city from any liability. So we need to make sure they have the insurance with naming the city as a third party insured.
Yes, Fernando is aware. Yes, that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
thank you.
believe they have that.
Yes.
We just need to make sure it's updated and verified for the new year.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's why we renew the contracts every year so that we get new updated information.
So, Little League make sure that you do have that.
Yeah.
Any comments from the citizens, Mary?
So
No, there are no comments posted.
So the consensus is that we're going to go ahead and go out for bids to rent the fields. Is that what the agreement? Is that what you got also, Fernando?
We only do the bids for the softball fields. Little League, we just enter into an agreement with them to use the
Okay,
field.
wonderful.
So when will these bids go out for these softball fields?
I will put it out probably. We can probably get it out this Friday because I already have the bid from last year and just advertise it. We accept bids for 2 weeks, and then we bring it to council in February for approval.
Okay,
And
all right,
then
thank
we can probably get it in maybe for the next council meeting, or not the first meeting in February, to renew their lease.
okay.
Wonderful.
Fernando, how much was the bid from last year?
I believe it was like $500 a month, somewhere around there for the softball fields.
And they maintained it, not the city, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's why they look the way they do. Anyway. Any other comments or questions or anything?
No, I'm good.
Good. What are the famous words, Jan?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ah!
Oh, y'all
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
Good night.
Good night.